Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the writing assessment for Level 1 and Level 2 Functional Skills English. We're going to break down the key elements you need to know in preparation for the assessment and for the rest of the course as well. Now if you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe, it really does help us out when you do so. So by the end of the lesson you'll be able to recall the key elements of the writing assessment, understand what is required of a successful response, and apply your understanding to produce an exam response. Look at the statements below and work out which ones are true and which are false. So this is just to test your current understanding of the writing portion of the course. So the first one then, the writing assessment has two different tasks. You get marks on writing a plan. You don't get marked on SPAG for the writing assessment. Task 1 has more marks available than Task 2. And finally, you must write in paragraphs for every form of writing. Now if you want to pause the video here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and go through the answers in the next part of the video. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So on our true statements then, on the left hand side, the writing assessment has two tasks. Now this is a really important detail about the assessment, because if you're not managing your time effectively, you do run the risk of spending too much time or too little time on one of the questions. You have to make sure that you're dividing your time equally on both of the questions. The second true statement then, you must write in paragraphs for every form of writing. So in a moment we're going to talk about the skills, as you can see there from our stretch and challenge task. So writing in paragraphs is going to be one of the real key and fundamental skills that you need to have in your writing assessment. For the false statements then, you get marked on writing a plan. So a lot of people are under the belief that writing a plan will actually help you in the exam, and it will to some extent. It is a good idea to have some form of a plan, but also don't spend too long on it, because they're not going to award you any marks for the plan. For the next false statement then, you don't get marked on SPAG for the writing assessment. This is false. Of course you would get marked on spelling, punctuation and grammar for the writing assessment. This is a really important component as well, and something we're going to talk about more in future videos. And the final one, task 1 has more marks available than task 2. So again, this is a false statement. You will have two tasks, but both of them are going to be equally weighted, so therefore we should be spending the equal amount of time on both tasks. So before we move on, if you can stretch and challenge yourself and try and think about what you've covered in previous lessons, what kind of skills are needed to be successful in this assessment. So key skills. These are some of the ones I think are particularly important when you go through the writing assessment. So here they are then. The first one of the most important ones for me, because this is not just important for functional skills but also really important if you're going to go on to do GCSE, is SPAG. If you're not sure what we mean by this, it is spelling, punctuation and grammar. Number 2, paragraphing. Again, as we said before, an extremely important part of writing. Number 3 is using discourse markers. Number 4 is your DeForest techniques. Number 5 is similes, and then metaphors, hyperbole, sentence structures, organisational features and presentational features as well. So what I'd like you to do now is just think about the following challenges, okay? So first thing that I'd like you to think about is, can you identify the skills that you already know? Now, if you followed any of our other videos, or if you've been studying functional skills for a while, you may know quite a few of these skills already, which is absolutely fantastic. For the super challenge, I want you to think about which of these skills do you currently use in your writing. A lot of the time when we're writing in assessments, a lot of the time the technical accuracy falls away. A lot of the time we kind of get too involved in what we're writing rather than the quality of the writing. So try and be honest with yourself here and really think, which ones do you actually use on a day-to-day basis? Which ones would you naturally use in an assessment? And the final one, rank each of these skills in terms of how important you think they are in the exam. All of them are important, but there's a real argument that some of them are more important than others. So if you think about the teacher's top tip before we move on, try and track your understanding over the next 8 weeks, as each one of these skills will be covered in the future lessons. The ones we're going to focus on in this video specifically is going to be your spelling, punctuation and grammar, and how to use paragraphs. Look at the two key terms below and make a note on their importance in functional skills. So first of all, as we said a moment ago, we have our SPAG. So this is arguably the most important feature of writing. Without having an accurate understanding of spelling, punctuation and grammar, you won't be able to communicate properly. And if you're applying for a job, or if you're filling out a CV or anything like that, and there are errors with your spelling, grammar or punctuation, this is going to throw up a real red flag for any employers. The next one is going to be paragraphing. So this is very important when it comes to your exam because it helps you to structure your writing. This will make your writing flow and create meaning for the reader and help to fully convey the message you are getting across. A good thing to think about as well with the stretch and challenge task there is what is meant by the term tip top. So if you're not too sure, this is the term we actually use to help understand when we are supposed to use a new paragraph in our writing, and we're going to go through that now. So here's our acronym then. We've got our acronym TIP-TOP. And for each one of these letters or each part of this word, we're going to break down how you can use this to help your paragraphing. So the first one is time. So every time you're writing and it changes time, so let's say you're writing about something that's happened in the morning and then you want to write about something that's happened in the evening or the afternoon, you'd need a new paragraph because we've had a shift in the time. The next one would be place. So let's say if we're writing a review and you're writing a review visiting some local attractions, each time you're talking about a different place, you would need a new paragraph. Next we have the topic. So let's say if you're writing about mobile phones and then your next paragraph is going to be on computers, we need to then break that down by making sure we're separating those into two separate paragraphs. And then finally we have person. So this is more relating to if you're writing an actual novel or narrative writing. This is where you're actually talking about a character, you're talking about that character quite in depth, and then you're changing to a different one. You're shifting your focus to a different character. So the first thing I want you to think about is, can you make a note of some of the key moments when you need to change paragraphs in your writing? This is quite a tricky thing to actually understand how you do it when you're doing it live, especially in an assessment. So the more you practice this, the easier it's going to get. And the super challenge, try and think about what organisational features we can use to actually help structure your writing. Look at the punctuation pyramid and attempt the challenges that follow. So if you haven't seen the punctuation pyramid, this is what it looks like. So it's going to show us literally the hierarchy for the punctuation terms. Okay, so again, this is our punctuation pyramid, and right at the top we have the easiest forms of punctuation, and towards the bottom we have the higher or the more valuable pieces of punctuation, arguably, in terms of the points that are awarded in your exam. So the first one, the most basic one that everyone should know how to use by now, is a full stop. Then we are getting a little bit more complicated. We have full stops and commas. So thirdly, we have full stops, commas, question marks and exclamation marks. Then we've got the same ones there, but we've also added the ellipses, apostrophes and quotation marks. And then for our final one, we've got all of the same as well that we've just mentioned. We also have a colon, a semicolon, parenthesis, also known as brackets, and a dash as well. Okay, this is also called a hyphen. It is quite confusing about how to use both of these, so if you're not too sure, do check out our other videos that go into this in more depth. So once we're looking at this punctuation pyramid, I just want you to think about which of these would be considered basic punctuation. So what I mean by that is what is the standard kind of normal punctuation you see every day, and which ones would it be in terms of how far we're going on the pyramid. For the super challenge, how many of these do you use in your own writing? Ideally, by the time you get to level 2 and GCSE level for English, you will be able to use the vast majority of the punctuation on the lower level. And then the mega challenge, can you actually define all forms of punctuation on the bottom section? And again, if you're not too sure about that, please do check out all the videos that go through them in more detail as well. Look at the extract and attempt the challenges that follow. So here you can see we've got a really big extract, and the first thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read through the extract and identify where the paragraphs need to go. If you're not too sure, the hint is that there are 3 paragraphs within this passage. You just need to decide where it should be separated. For the super challenge, identify where the response can be improved by using basic punctuation. So if you're not sure what we mean when we say basic punctuation, we're talking about the top 2 layers or 3 layers of the punctuation pyramid, essentially talking about things like full stops, commas, question marks, and exclamation marks. Then if you can stretch yourself, try and annotate the extract to use a range of punctuation forms from the punctuation pyramid, and the aim of this is to try to actually get down to that lower level or the highest level if you think about it in terms of the things that will get you marks. So you want to try and use things like the colons, semicolons and the parenthesis and things like that to really make the response get the maximum amount of marks for technical accuracy. If you're not too sure as well, you can always download the extract and have a go at yourself as well. All of that will be available in the link below. Class feedback. Check your answers against the correct response. So we'll read through them and we'll just go through that we understand where the punctuation needs to go and also where we need to have paragraphs in our writing as well. So it says then, dining blog. Our evening at the restaurant was just awful. The restaurant was supposed to serve authentic Italian food, but what we were served was like the meals had just been thrown together and chucked in a microwave. I always try to be honest with my reviews, as you'll know if you followed me before, and I think this place was by far the worst dining experience I've ever had. So if you think about that one there, it's a very clear and succinct paragraph giving us an overview of the dining experience. We have a number of different forms of punctuation. The one that's really important is the exclamation mark, where it says how awful the actual experience was. We also have parentheses, where we're adding that extra information as well. So the next paragraph, service. So what you can see here is we're using subheadings as well to help break down our paragraphs and using those organisational features as well. Do you think customer service is important in a restaurant? Well, if it's not, then this might be the place for you. When we arrived at 7 PM, we were told that our reservation had been given away to another group. Can you imagine that? We had paid in advance to secure our booking and instead was forced to wait 45 minutes before we got a table. So again, if you're not sure where the punctuation would go here, have a look at the example. You can see there's a lot of rhetorical questions. Obviously you should have things like full stops and capital letters, and you can see where the commas have been used as well. It allows me to give a little bit of a pause and an emphasis to certain words or ideas in the paragraph. At 8 PM, we were finally given menus and had our drinks orders taken. It seemed as though there were some amazing dishes being served. Plated high with food were being carried with purpose and eager customers, and for one brief moment I let my guard down. I let my guard down and allowed myself to believe, for an instant, that this review wasn't going to be all that bad. Okay, so have a look over it then. Hopefully by now you'd see where the paragraphs would go and why it's been separated. If you're not too sure, look back over the tip-top acronym that we looked at earlier and really think, when would we actually separate these into paragraphs? If you do have any questions or concerns, please do leave us a comment in the comment section below. Writing task. Look at the question and attempt the challenges that follow. So the first thing I'd like you to do, if you want to put this into action, is to write an account about the last time you went to a restaurant. If you can't think of one of those, you could easily do anything else that you can kind of write an account about, anything you've experienced or even a day out. The super challenge. Make sure the response has at least 2 paragraphs. So we've got to get into that habit of naturally writing in our paragraphs. And the mega challenge, use the punctuation pyramid to use a range of punctuation effectively. And again, if you're someone who doesn't use a lot of punctuation, it's really important that you get back into that habit of using it, especially if you're going to think about going on to level 2 or even GCSE English as well. Another thing, an important thing to know, is that if you forget to write in paragraphs, you can go back and draw 2 vertical lines to show where the paragraphs should be. Now this is a really good thing to do in assessments. A lot of the time when you are in assessment, we panic and we freeze up. So if you do forget to write in paragraphs, you can always go back in, have a look, and in the margin, just put the 2 vertical lines to indicate that's where you wanted your paragraphs to go. So in our next lesson then, we're going to go through the following things. So we're going to recall the key skills needed for the writing assessment. We're going to understand the importance of language and of structure, and then you're going to use that to apply it to your actual writing of a response. Okay, you don't always have to go through these writing responses, but generally speaking, the more we can get used to, the easier it's going to be when you come to your assessment. Now, if you need any additional help or support, new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. Thanks ever so much for listening, guys, and all the best with your work and revision in the future. Bye bye.